Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. We're in the War Magic series today. We're in the Mythic Adventures book. We are covering 3rd level arcane spells. The first spell on the list is Ablative Barrier, and it, based on what it's saying here, you add half your tier to the spell's armor bonus. You add half your tier to the amount of lethal damage from each attack that is converted to non-lethal damage, and the DR gets non-lethal damage, and half your tier to your caster level when determining how much damage the spell converts before it's discharged. So if you put that on a one-use item, give that to your soldiers, and they all use that while they're in melee, they'd take a lot less damage, which means they would be up and able to fight, and easily healed too with the non-lethal damage. And the battle could rage on for a lot longer. Next is Beast Shape 1. Okay. Each mythical beast shape spell must be learned individually, and you must know the respective non-mythical beast shape spells to learn the mythic versions. You don't have to learn them in order, and are not required to know a lower mythic beast shape spell before you learn a higher level one. For example, you can learn mythic beast shape 2 if you know beast shape 2, even if you don't know mythic beast shape 1. Or each mythic beast shape spell adds the following benefits to its represented non-mythic version. The spell's bonus to ability scores increases by 2, the natural armor bonus increases by 1, and the ability score penalties decrease by 2. Minimum penalty of 0. Choose one natural attack type the animal form has, such as bite or claws. The critical multiplier for that attack type increases by 1. Maximum times 4. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, the ability score bonus increases by an additional 2. During each case of the casting of the spell, a number of times equal to your tier, you can act as if you had the natural spell feat for 1 round. For example, if you're 2nd tier, you can use the natural spell feat for 2 rounds per casting of the mythical beast shape. In and of itself isn't going to be that great, but if you put that on a bunch of one-use items and all of a sudden a section of your army turns into like bears and starts mauling the hell out of the other army, they're going to have a big advantage and a big set of chaos. So you could use that to your advantage. Bleed Glory. I don't think that one's useful, but let's find out. Bleed Glory isn't even in here. Okay. Blink. You may spend a move action to remain corporal or incorporeal until the end of your turn. You automatically resume blinking at the end of your turn. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can spend either a swift action or move action to remain corporal or incorporeal until the end of your turn. Kind of gives you more control over the blink effect. That said, the blink spell is very useful anyways. So throw the blink spell on a bunch of one-use items, give them to your melee combatants, and then they're not there while they're fighting, so the enemy's going to have a hard time dealing with them. Burrow. I believe I covered Burrow in the divine spells. Daylight, Deep Slumber, I covered Daylight in there, Deep Slumber, This spell works like Mythic Sleep, except that it affects up to 20 hit dice of creatures. Alternatively, you may target one creature rather than an area, increase the duration to 1 hour per level. Augmented Fifth. If you expend 2 uses of Mythic Power, creatures affected by the spell can be awakened only by Mythic effects. If you're 5th tier and expend 3 uses of Mythic Power, the duration increases to 10 years per tier. If you're 5th tier and expend 4 uses of Mythic Power, the spell has both augmented effects. Creatures sleeping for years because of this spell age and breathe as normal, but don't need to eat or drink while the spell lasts. That's real cool. I don't see that benefiting you in a military effect other than the wide area of sleep and how many hit dice it can affect. That would be useful on the battlefield. Throw that on some one-use items, chuck them into the middle of their military, and watch soldiers just drop. Yes, they could be awoken, but that takes time. Devolution. The saving throw changes to will. If succeeds at the save, the Eidolon loses 1 evolution. Choose at random. So that wouldn't be useful for a battlefield unless you have a whole bunch of summoners using Eidolons. Draconic Reservoir, Fireball. Draconic Reservoir. The amount of energy damage the spell absorbs increases to 10 points per caster level, maximum 100 points. The energy damage from the weapons improves as if using Corrosive Burst, Flaming Burst, Icy Burst, or Shocking Burst weapons. Augmented Third. If you expend 2 uses of Mythic Power, spending a swift action applies the energy damage to any number of creatures the target hits this round, not just the first. Cool. Don't see that being useful unless you can put that on one-use items. Give that to your... I'd give it to your knights, because they'd have swords. I'd give it to your actual forces in armor from horseback. Fireball. The damage dealt increases to 1d10 points of fire damage per caster level, maximum 10d10. Any creature that fails its reflex saving throw catches on fire, taking 2d6 points of damage each round until the fire is extinguished. Attempts to extinguish the fire uses the spell's save DC. Augmented 6. If you expend 2 uses of Mythic Power, the maximum damage increases to 20d10. The area increases to 40-foot radius spread, and any fire damage dealt by the spell bypasses fire resistance and fire immunity. So that's a really good fireball. I would take the fireball and put them as sling stones, hand that to a lot of your soldiers, and they can launch areas of fireball effects just from slings. And you'd only need a handful of them to devastate a section of the army. Fire Stream. The damage dealt increases 2d10 points of fire damage. Any creature that fails its saving throw also catches fire. The continuous line of fire pushes against all creatures, making them treat the spell's area as difficult terrain. Augmented Fourth. If you expend 2 uses of Mythic Power, you create a second line of fire using your other hand. If you overlap the lines, creatures in the overlap must attempt 2 saving throws and take the lower result, but don't take damage from both lines. You may stop either line of fire as a free action on your turn, but once you stop maintaining a line, you must cast Mythic Fire Stream again to recreate it. That can be useful just because it's a line of fire and it creates difficult terrain. It'd be just as useful as Walls of Fire. The problem is that one comes from the hand, so that one's a caster specific. you'd have to come up with a way to, say, give them one-use gloves. Then they can create the lines of fire and push the soldiers with the lines of fire as it says in the spell. Fly is a good spell. You can give that to your archers. They now have even better control over the battlefield. Even if it's one use and they can only fly for like 10 minutes, they now can go and pick off whatever they want to pick off and then come back. You can also use that to get over defenses and such for a siege, and maneuvers for a boat. You can get up there and start destroying the enemy's mast. So fly is very useful. Gaseous form is just as useful if you can give it to a large group of your soldiers. They can then take gaseous form and move into unexpected areas, into a siege area, into a encampment, so on and so forth. Haste would be very useful if you can give your soldiers a one-use item of haste. They activate it, the item will disintegrate, but they would get, say, even 1 minute worth of haste, so 10 rounds at most. That's 10 rounds where their AC is higher, they make more attacks in a round. They get a bonus to the attacks. They could really destroy another army fast with that. Healing Thief, Heroism, Hydraulic Torrent. Hydraulic Torrent sounds like the fire stream, and I believe it's similar, so it could be just as useful. Lightning Bolt, give that to a few of your men and tell them cast lightning bolt here and there and there, and then they can just wipe out a section of the enemy. Because if I remember correctly, lightning bolt's like a beam of lightning through a square to a set distance. So it's like a wall of lightning, attacks everything that it passes through and then dissipates at the end of it. I'm looking it up just to see how it changed for the Mythic adventures. The damage dealt increases to 1d8 points of electrical damage per caster level, maximum 10d8. Any creature that fails its save is staggered for 1 round. Augmented third. If you expend 2 uses of mythic power, you can bend the line of the spell once up to 90 degrees. Any creature that fails its save is stunned for 1 round. So yeah, it's a line, and with the augmented version, you can bend it 90 degrees. So it would be useful because it can drop a lot of soldiers that are wearing armor. It can affect a large line of areas. So if you could get to the flanks of the military, you could then launch lightning bolts down the whole line of the enemy soldiers. Magic weapon doesn't benefit you in a military sense, because if you're going to have magical weapons, you're going to have supplied them with magical weapons. Monstrous Physique 1. You got a bunch of guys willing to drink a potion and turn into monsters. That would work. They can start mowing into the enemy, and the enemy will target them more specifically, but the amount of chaos and damage they would do would be crazy. Phantom Steed. That one's useful for transporting your military. If you want to cover large amounts of ground, Phantom Steed and the first level version, and Expeditious Retreat would be great ways for you to traverse large areas with your soldiers without having to have anything to feed the animals or logistical wise to support that part of it. Sands of Time, covered that one. Share Glory. Slow would be useful if you could put that on sling stones, launch it into the enemy, Every enemy hit by it would be under this slow effect. They'd only get half an action a turn. Stinking Cloud would be useful. Drop that as one-use items into the areas that you want to affect the enemy. Strangling Hair, Suggestion, Touch, Injection, Vampiric Touch. Let's see how we could make Vampiric Touch awesome. Oh, the epic version of Haste gives you an additional move action each round. The spell's damage increases to 1d8 points of damage per 2 caster levels, maximum 10d8. Your melee touch attack to deliver the spell's threatens a critical hit on a 19 or 20. This expanded threat range does not stack with any other effects, abilities that increase threat range. If the damage kills the target, you gain fast healing 5 for a number of rounds equal to the hit dice of the target. I'd put that on some spear tips and have that as a one-use activation. Touch a rune on the spear or say a word and activate it. And if that spear hits the target, then it does vampiric touch damage to it. And that damage could then be converted to fast healing 5 to you if you drop them per hit dice. So normal soldier might be up to between 2nd and 5th level would be the normal ones. The common ones would be 1st level. And you would gain fast healing 5 for that. Well, fast healing 5 for that many rounds equal to the hit dice. So you could recover quickly from the damages sustained in the wall-to-wall fighting. Well, that's it as far as the arcane spells go for 3rd level. The spells I skipped over were definitely duplicates from the divine list. So, until we all game again, guys,